The Wisconsin Realtors Association is pleased to present this virtual conference session entitled FSBOS, Playing the Odds. We are very pleased to welcome all of you to this program. And now it's my pleasure to introduce today's moderator, Pam Zaleski. Pam, welcome to the program.
Thank you. And hello, everyone. I'm Pam Zaleski, the broker-owner for Prism Real Estate in snowy Stevens Point. I'm also a WRA Real Estate School trustee, and one responsibility of the Real Estate School is to provide interesting and informative educational programs to help you in your business. Today's session is full of valuable information guaranteed to help your business, so I hope you take advantage of it and the knowledge of our speaker. Feel free to ask questions at any time in the chat box, and I'll do my best to work with our speaker to answer them during our time together. If we are unable to answer all the questions, we will respond after the program. So without further delay, let's get started. It's my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Pam Ehrman. Pam Ehrman has spent her entire business career in real estate, obtaining her license at the age of 18. Entering a full-time management career by the age of 24, she has spent the last 25 years coaching individual agents, teams, and companies to their highest levels of productivity. Pam has accomplished highly successful management careers in both a privately owned and franchise business model, and has authored 2 successful training series specific to business planning and the dynamic growth of real estate teams. Being selected as the Real Estate Educator of the Year in her home state of Virginia is just one of her career milestones. In addition to instructing for numerous state GRI programs, she has joined the cadre of National Certified Real Estate Specialist Program. Please help us welcome Pam Ehrman. Pam, welcome.
Thank you, Pam. I appreciate it, and I'm excited about this topic. And I think the question that we have to answer is we said right in the title of our presentation, "Playing the Odds." And anytime you're playing the odds, the real question is, are the odds worth it? Right? What are the odds at this point in terms of you putting your time and your effort into working with sellers, with for sale by owners, which, by the way, as you can see from what we have on the screen, there's another name for them, and that's often being called unrepresented sellers, right? Because that's who they are. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But I think another way to put it is, I used to have a broker that I worked for, loved him. He was probably one of my greatest mentors, and he used to always say, "Pam, is the juice worth the squeeze?" Right? Is the juice worth the squeeze? In other words, are the odds, so to speak, in your favor? I believe in taking risk, but I also believe in taking calculated risk. So let's take a look real quick at what NAR has put out recently. And it's funny because I think when I turned in this program, I think it said at that time that right then the odds were 8%. That 8% of all the sales that were occurring through for sale by owners. And since then, the new number has come up, where buyers who in this case had registered how they found their property, in a lot of cases we're talking about coming directly from the seller, and this shows 2%, but that doesn't always mean that's the only category that they found a for sale by owner. It could have been they called the yard sign and it was specifically on the yard of a for sale by owner. The real numbers at this point are 7%. They've dropped again this year. That 7% of home sales in this last year were for sale by owner sales. That represents a decrease, obviously, from what I was sharing with you just a few minutes ago, but the interesting thing is that it's the lowest share of the market recorded since 1981. And I think that's kind of interesting because I think we perceive the idea that as the seller has more and more information at their fingertips, that we become less and less relevant. And I really think that what we're seeing is the opposite. It's kind of like getting oversaturated. It's like having so much information that you become dangerous. We've seen that. I mean, I have a 19-year-old that just went off to college, and my gosh, there comes a day when you just say enough is enough of the technology. There's so much coming at them that it's hard for them to concentrate or feel confident because they're kind of learning surface, but they're not drilling down. And obviously what we bring to the table is we drill down and know what it takes to get a house sold. Back when I started, I think they had mentioned earlier, I came into the real estate business, I hate to even admit it, in 1978. I've been around for a long time. I've seen a lot of cycles. And I think back then the figures were like 13% of the market. So there's definitely been a decreasing. And I think what it allows us to do is bring value to the transaction, justify our existence, and we're going to talk a little bit about how to get in that position to do that today. Now, we've all heard that you know, the idea that the seller, when you're talking to them, an unrepresented seller for sale by owner says, oh, you know, we're not working with an agent. We don't need an agent, right? And what I found in all the years that I either worked them or helped many of my agents work them. In fact, my last office, I had 150 agents in one office. So we've seen a lot of for sale by owner processes. But it's a product of comparing confidence and time, right? If the for sale by owner's confidence level starts off low and as the time goes on, it gets easier and easier to convince that individual that they need our services. And, you know, and rightfully so, the same thing is if their confidence starts higher, then there's that sweet spot, so to speak, where they decide that they need you. So obviously here, if we're talking about, let me go back. If we're talking about this relationship down here, where their confidence started lower, it doesn't take as much time for them to start to question whether they're okay on their own. If it starts higher, it tends to still be possible, but it takes a little bit longer for them to go through the process and ultimately get to the point that they may decide that they need some assistance. And so I share that with you because the question is not whether they need an agent. It's when will they need an agent. And you have to see it that way because when you're working for sell by owners and you call them and the immediate response is, we don't need an agent, we're not working with agents, that locks into your brain. You're thinking, oh, you know, I can forget that one. That's not going to, well, maybe their confidence level is very high. And the person or the agent that's willing to stick with that process, and yes, every now and then, guess what? 70% of the time they're selling, right? But if you stick with that process and everybody else shakes off because they seem so confident in their position, there comes a day where they're tired of the third or fourth person that said they'd show up, and the third or fourth person that said they were going to bring a contract and didn't. They get to the point where they're starting to say, maybe we need some help because their confidence level is changing. So get that in your paradigm if you're working for sell by owners. What they tell you and what they do are often very different things. It's just a matter of time. All right? So let's go to this whole process. And what I'm going to share with you, what I'm getting ready to share with you is not a dialogue that I found in a book and thought, oh, well, let's share this and we'll use this today. This is a dialogue that I wrote over years of working for sell by owners. And I've always said that I try very hard to make sure that my training is not theory, it's practice. It's real easy to stand up and deliver theory and then you go out and practice it and go, this doesn't work. But, you know, they say you can argue with my theory, you can't argue with my experience. You can't argue with the idea that when I did it, these were the results that occurred. Now, I can tell you this dialogue that I'm sharing with you is front-loaded. It requires you to be willing to do some work up front in order to shorten the amount of time necessary to convince them that they need you. And so often the process for most people working for sell by owners is the opposite. They do the drip, 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 and then hope for a time at a later date that they get to come in and do the presentation or show them pricing or marketing or whatever it happens to be. My goal was always get the commitment early, service them until the day comes that they go, it's time. Because when they hit the wall and go, you know what, this is not working, I don't want them to be filtering through 10 cards. I don't want them thinking about who they'll talk to. I don't want them selling the listing to the highest bidder. I want to have earned enough credibility up front that when they hit that wall, the only name that pops into their brain in that spot, top of mind awareness, is my name or my agent's name, as the case might have been. So I'm going to break this down into two dialogues. The first dialogue is basically the initial contact. It's setting up the appointment, it's making the appointment to see them, and then ultimately the next dialogue is going to be what you do when you're at that presentation, how you're going to bring it home at that point. So in looking at this, I also want you to know that a lot of these words are very intentional. And so when I used to role play with the agents, and they would say, "Hi, this is Cameron with ABC Realty. How are you today?" And they go, "Fine, thank you." "Well, Mrs. Smith, I saw your ad, or I saw your, I saw your information online. I saw you in whatever it happened to be, offering your home for sale." And they would say something like, "How's it going?" Well, that's not the dialogue. My dialogue was, "Have you sold your home yet?" Because, see, when you think about the purpose of this first phone call, my goal for the first phone call or the first contact, whether that's the call or if I just happen to be driving by and knocking on the door, is to reinforce their value. It's not to draw a wedge between them. It's not to pit them against me. It's not to have a we-they conversation. When I say to them, "Have you sold your home yet?" to a certain extent, I'm giving them a backwards compliment that basically says, "I know you're capable of doing this. I'm not going to sit here and tell you and scare you into the fact that you should be with an agent. You're going to blow it if you don't." My job is to earn credibility. It's to build rapport and relationship. So the question, that first question, and you all should have a handout today that can help you really kind of bring home the strength of all of this information. In addition, I'm pretty sure I uploaded both of these dialogues, so you can take them with you afterwards and really just kind of practice them if you can buy into this process. But again, when you say, "Have you sold your home yet?" they don't immediately start justifying why you should be in the picture. They start justifying what they're doing. "Well, actually, we've had about 4 people, and one said that they were going to bring an offer, and we don't have it yet, but I'm really hoping for." They want you to be convinced to a certain extent that they have it all together. And so what it does is it tells me very quickly what's been their experience. Have they had 4 people? Did somebody promise them last week? Well, somebody told us last week that they were going to bring an offer, but we haven't seen it yet. Well, we know what that means. 9 times out of 10, the offer's not showing up if it didn't show up within a week. So that's a first initial question, rapport building. Have you sold your home yet? The second one is, "Mrs. Smith, are you cooperating with brokers?" Now, you're going to find that when I ask these questions, I know that in many cases they're not going to know exactly what I'm asking. And that's what I want. I want there to be two-sided conversation, and I don't want this conversation to be one where I'm justifying myself the minute I get on the phone and I'm trying to prove my value, why you need to talk to me. I want a conversation with this person that will allow us to build a relationship. And so when I say, "Are you cooperating with brokers?" I always know it's going to get one of 3 answers. The answer is yes, and it's like, "Great, well, I'd like to make an appointment to see your home. What time could I stop by today?" If the answer was, "What do you mean?" which is probably 50% of the time, and this dialogue comes very clearly to me. I mean, I can hear it in my head. "Well," and I would say it just like that, "Well," and there was a hesitation. "Well, are you allowing agents to preview your property, number one, or if I had a buyer for your home, would you allow me to show it?" Now, did I tell that person I have a buyer for their home? Right? I never said I have a buyer for your home. I said, "Are you allowing agents to show it?" So cooperating with brokers means, are you allowing agents to show it? Or if I had a buyer for your home, are you allowing agents to preview it? Or if I had a buyer for your home, are you allowing agents to show it? Now, they can say at that point an answer to that question, and we're going to get into that in just one second. The third answer is no. Are you cooperating with brokers? No. Well, the best place to be is to always have an answer to the objection, right? You never want to ask a question that you don't have an answer to. So when they say no, there were a series of answers that I had to that, which was basically like, okay, I mean, at the end of it, my real goal was, help me understand this. You're trying to sell your house, right? So I would say to them, well, Ms. Smith, you know, the statistics in this area show that 95% of the time, well, we just heard 93% of the time, a buyer in an area is working with an agent. So may I ask you why you've made that decision? I know you want to sell your home. Why have you made the decision at this point not to cooperate with brokers? Now think about that. My question is not yes or no at this point. It's help me to understand. Another one, since you're looking for a buyer for your home, why have you made that decision, Mrs. Smith? Now, again, part of this process is really being interested enough to want to know the answer. If you sound like you're reading the dialogue from the person that's trying to sell you a timeshare, you might as well hang it up, right? Nobody wants that call. Half the time you're going to hang up on it somewhere in the middle of it while they're finishing their sentence because you've asked them 4 times to please finish the conversation. They won't. That's not what we're doing here. Our job is to take an interest in this person and the sale of their property. Well, since I know you're looking for a buyer, I mean, even as a for sale by owner, you're doing the same thing we're doing. Since 95% of the time they're working with an agent, why have you made that decision, Mrs. Smith? Can you help me understand that? All right, next is, well, let me clarify, and I would use that term all the time. Well, let me clarify. When they say no, it's like, well, gosh, if you said no, that's kind of like a strange answer, so I must need to clarify myself better. Well, let me clarify what I mean. Are you allowing agents, and here I am back to that same question, aren't I? Are you allowing agents to preview your home, or if I had a buyer, would you allow me to show it? Again, if they say, no, we will not allow you to show the property, we will not allow you to preview the property, then there comes a time when you're able to say, well, you know, obviously I'm seeing here that it looks like you've been on for like the last 3 or 4 days. I think you came on Monday. Now remember our graph, high levels, right, of confidence? They're obviously at a high point in confidence. If you don't mind, I'll just check in about a week and see if there's anything I might be able to answer for you, any help I might be able to give you, and I'll check in again to see if it's possible to preview it. If you haven't sold it yet, right, it's all about reinforcing the relationship. But 99% of the time, by the time you do this, because did we take the first no? And we've all been taught, you don't ever take the first no in real estate. In fact, it's like the 6th or 7th no that we've heard so many times when we take answering objections or, you know, objection answering classes. We have to keep coming back and asking again or rephrasing for the answer. So are you allowing an agent to preview the home? Or if I had a buyer, would you allow me to show it? No. Well, can you help me to clarify that a little bit? I know you want to sell your home. Why have you made that decision? All of that just keeps coming back to this. Okay, so now let's go to the next one. This is what often happens. Because if I say, or if I had a buyer for your home, would you allow me to show it? We all have heard this talking to a seller. So they say, well, do you have a buyer for my home? Right? That's one of the things. It's, are you allowing agents to preview your property? Or if I had a buyer, would you allow me to show it? Now, I say those things very clearly for a purpose because I want them to hear, first of all, that the conversation about a buyer is front and center. That doesn't mean I have one or don't have one, but I'm not calling just because I want to push paperwork underneath your nose. And then they say to me, do you have a buyer for my home? Right? And when that occurs, or if they say, and actually I'll come back to that. Here's my next dialogue. Here's the next thing that was ingrained in my brain because it's the question that answers all questions. In fact, I think on the second page of your handout, it says the answer to everything, right? Do you have a buyer for my home? Well, I don't know, Mr. Smith. I haven't seen it yet, but I would like to make an appointment to preview it. I don't know. I haven't seen the home yet, but I would love to make an appointment to preview it first. Well, what do you think my home is worth? I don't know. I can't give you that number yet. I haven't seen it, but I'd love to make an appointment to preview it. Let me take a look at it first, right? What do you charge? I don't know. I haven't seen the home yet, but I would like an opportunity to preview it. I can usually tell you those things after I've seen the home. Now, I'm surely not going to make it sound like I'm disturbed when they ask. That's for your purpose. But the reality is whatever they ask me, that question is what brings you back to the cyclical process you're in To get what? Do we want a listing on this? Do we want to convince them that they can't do it on their own? What's the only purpose for this conversation, right? What is our number one purpose? And that's where we're leading to. They'll say, I'll say, but I'd like to preview your home. And then they say, I'm not willing to pay a commission. Well, we're not going to pay a commission. We're not paying an agent a commission. And this was my next dialogue. Oh, I understand that, Mr. Smith. That's why you're for sale by owner. I get that. But I'd still like the opportunity to preview your home. Would it be possible to schedule an appointment or a chance to preview it? Because now what I'm interested in is affirming, reassuring, and requesting. Those are my 3 steps in my mind. Well, we're not willing to pay a commission. Oh, I understand that. Affirm. I understand that. That's why you're for sale by owner. I respect that. But I would like to make an appointment to preview, right? So I'm going to reassure you. I just like the opportunity to preview. That's what I'm calling for. And then last, would it be possible to schedule an appointment? There's my request. So affirm, reassure, and request, right? And again, when they say, I'm not willing to pay a commission, I can't say, I don't know yet. I don't know, Mr. Smith. I haven't seen your home yet. That's not the answer to that question. That's the one thing that can't get answered within this realm. I'm not willing to pay a commission. It has its own dialogue. Oh, I understand that, Mrs. Smith. That's why you're for sale by owner, and I respect that. But I would love to still make an appointment to preview. How many of you all in a fast-moving market have a buyer that may have been willing to pay your fee in order to see a house that you sign them up, for example, for buyer agency, and maybe they haven't seen a for sale banner, or maybe you just know the area and saw one that popped up and you want to make that commitment and you want to get your buyers in? Is it possible that we could be talking to a for sale by owner who will never pay our commissions and the buyer will build it into their transaction? You know, does it happen all the time? No. But is it legitimate enough to be able to say, I understand, Mr. Smith, that's why you're a for sale by owner? And here's what I also know. There's a big difference between telling you, I'm not willing to pay you a commission, and staring at an offer that's been written with a commission paid to you for a buyer who's highly qualified, is willing to pay their price, and they've been sitting there for 2 weeks thinking it was going to sell in 24 hours. Big difference. So let's remember our goal. Our goal is get in the door. Our goal is preview the property. It's nothing else. So when they want to pull you into, and I have listened to the dialogues when I've had people on phones and I've been listening to them, I've listened to the people say, we're not willing to pay a commission. And then they start trying to justify the commission. Or they say, well, what do you charge? Well, actually, our commissions are, no, there's no conversation about anything that could cause a wall to go up, that now there's a we they, there is an intent to prove me right and you wrong or validate my existence. That is not the purpose of this first call. The first call is rapport and get in the door, right? Rapport and get in the door. We've talked about what commission do you charge? Why do you think my home hasn't sold? There's another one. Well, you know what? Why do you think it hasn't sold yet? I can't tell you I haven't seen your home yet. Why don't we set up a time for me to preview it, and I promise you I can give you a little bit more information about that question at this point, right? I don't know. I haven't seen it yet. And see, so often we think that's nothing but dialogue, and let's think about it. Their home hasn't sold. Well, what if you're looking at pictures online, and this thing looks like a show place, and then you walk in the door and it smells like they've got a kennel of 15 dogs in the house, right? We used to call that, back then when the prices were even a little bit lower, we used to call that on our house tours, we called that the $10,000 dog, right? Everybody would come through the house, they'd walk through, and as they're walking out, they'd look to somebody else and say, $10,000 dog. In other words, you're going to have to lower that price $10,000 to get over that smell. So why do you think my home hasn't sold? Honestly, Mr. Smith, I haven't seen your home yet, so it'd be hard for me to answer that. But let's set up an appointment to preview it. I promise you I can give you some feedback. Period. Keep yourself in that cyclical conversation to do nothing. Don't argue or debate any point at that point. What would you do to market my home? I don't know yet, Mr. Smith. I haven't seen your home yet. right? You could walk in and there's this absolutely gorgeous backyard that they never put in the photos, and you're going to start to really nail that and put it on your Facebook ad and boost it because you're coming up to the summer and that thing's going to sell the house. I don't know. I haven't seen your home yet. I promise you I'll be able to give you a great example of how we can market your home once we've seen it. Now, if they start asking those kind of questions to you, your gut says, oh my gosh, they're willing to talk, and then you want to start the conversation. And the problem is you are still at a distance from this person. And so when you start trying to nail it and bring it home at that moment, instead of getting in front of them where you're building even deeper rapport, then you're shooting yourself in the foot and you're trying to take the shortcut. Okay? So just remember, the answer to everything is, I don't know, Mr. Smith. I haven't seen your home yet, but I would like an opportunity to preview it. Okay? So when we look at this, again, there's our cyclical, that's the cyclical dialogue. We want to preview the property, won't pay a commission. Do you have a buyer? What do you charge? Why is my house sold? Number one goal is to see it. It's not to sell it. Not on that phone call. Okay? See it, not sell it. All right, let's go to the second dialogue. And again, you should have both of those in the upload. But let's talk about this second dialogue, which is the contact. You've done your job, and they've said, fine, you can come see it. How about tomorrow at 2 o'clock? Great. I'll look forward to meeting you. I'll see you at 2. And then you show up, and this is the preview. Okay? So let's make sure you're in, on your handout, that you're in contact number 2, which is the preview. And in the preview, while I'm going through this preview, there were 4 questions that I was going to get answered while I was on that preview. And see, again, the easiest way to replicate success is to have a systematic approach to doing the same thing over and over again. Because what happens is, if it worked once and you fine-tune it, it will work again. It also, though, allows you to fine-tune your talent. You master the process. And so the next time you go, you can almost do it in your sleep. And so one of my first questions was, as I'm going through, and I'm saying to them, first of all, what you're looking for is a tour of the property. Take the tour. And taking that tour, I'd love for you to show me through the house. John, Mary, when you bought this home, you walked in and there were things about it that you said, this is it. And if you don't mind, I think it's going to be easiest to see the home through your eyes. I know what I'm going to be looking for, but I want to see what you have to share about your home because you're the one that bought it. So let's take a tour of your home. And as I'm walking through, these are the questions. Mary, I'm curious. If I said, and the house is selling for, I've got down here $325,000. Yes. Yeah, I'm just curious, how did you arrive at your price? And they're going to tell you what their resource was. Okay? So just keep that in mind. How did you arrive at your price? And then somewhere in that tour, I'm going to say, let me ask you this. What kind of concessions are you willing to make to help a buyer purchase the home? And they usually say, remember that question? Well, what do you mean? Right? Well, what are you willing to do? Have you agreed to, or do you think you would pay closing costs on behalf of a buyer? Closing date. I mean, if somebody wanted to move in pretty quickly, are you able to move out pretty quickly? What are you willing to put on the table, so to speak, that sweetens the sale for a buyer? What kind of concessions might you make? That's the next thing. Third, have you determined a buyer profile for your home? So as I'm walking through, Mary, have you determined by any chance the buyer profile for your home? And what form of exposure are you looking to, or have you been doing? I saw you online. Is there anything else that you all are relying on? And there's another dialogue that goes to that, and I'm going to share that with you in a minute. And at the very end, how long have you given yourself to sell your home? And do you see those words before you even consider? And that's because that's how I said it. Again, Mary, let me ask you a question. Before we leave, I have to ask, how long have you given yourself to sell your home before you even consider the services of a professional realtor? Because on that too, have you sold your home yet? I'm not going to insult you and act like you're, an idiot for having your house on the market by yourself. I'm going to respect the fact that you look pretty darn intelligent. You're probably running a company, and home to show me the house. So how long are you giving yourself before you even consider the services of a professional realtor? And I've been with some of my agents that said, I'm just curious. I mean, do you like this process? I mean, is this something that obviously that you don't, or do you just like this process? I know you want to sell your home and you just like this process, and they giggle a little bit when they're saying it, right? So those are the 4 questions, and they're going to come within the preview, which is that second appointment. So again, when you show up, the first goal is take the preview, ask them for the tour, and have those 4 questions ready. So when they say, I'm curious, Mrs. Smith, how did you arrive at the price? Then what we're looking at is when you get that offer or when you get that answer, I don't care what they tell me. They can say, well, an individual from ABC Realty was here last week, and they brought in a huge, extensive market analysis. Well, did they take adjustments? I mean, one of the things, we're surely not appraisers, but there's some sure principles of appraising that will apply. Did they take adjustments on those comparables, or did they just show you the comps? There's always an answer. When they did the CMA, did they show you an absorption rate? Did they compare the absorption rate in your area? Did they give you an indication of how long it's going to take for you to get that price? There's always something that you can bring. And I'm not saying anything but doing the research at this point. I am setting the stage. The next thing, when they're talking about what type of concessions are you willing to make? Well, what does that lead me to? If they say, well, yeah, we're willing to pay closing costs. Well, I found in a lot of cases that sellers aren't exactly sure what that involves. Like, how much do you pay the city? I mean, every seller that sells is going to have to pay a certain amount of money to the city, or the buyer has to pay a certain amount of money in their closing costs to a mortgage loan officer or the lending agency or the title person, or whether they get a survey. So did anybody do a net for you based on those seller concessions? Just all I'm doing is asking questions. I'm looking for the holes in the argument. The next one, have you determined a buyer profile for your property? And what form of exposure? That's going to lead me to have that conversation about a marketing plan. Okay, so I'm looking for, and they go, well, you know what, I'd love to tell you we're doing a lot, but the truth is we both work full-time jobs. We put it on Zillow. I mean, we're getting some activity from that. And what else have you done? I mean, is there anything else? No, we're just kind of relying on Zillow. Okay, that's telling me what I need to know at that point. And I'm not going to argue with these points. I'm collecting information. And this one tells me motivation and timing. How long have you given yourself before you even consider? I'm looking for, where are you on that confidence factor? Where are you on that confidence continuum? So once we have those things and we're asking about those, think about this. If they've said, if I've asked for these things, what is the combination of all these things? A market or pricing analysis, a seller's net sheet, a marketing plan, and motivation and timing. Isn't that a listing appointment, right? Isn't that a listing appointment? Because that comes to the dialogue, the wrap-up dialogue. And as I said, under marketing and pricing, no matter what they've received, I can always drill in. Even if it's just say, you know something, what most people find is getting a second opinion on that value is really important, period. I didn't say I'd like to give you one yet. The next, the buyer's closing costs, the seller's closing costs, their net estimates, reflecting normal cost of sale. Those are all things that are tied up in that, right? And then the marketing plan. And this is my dialogue. I told you there was another dialogue that went with that. When I said to them, Mr. Smith, I usually find that the biggest challenge a person faces in selling their home, after I've said, what kind of marketing? And they go, well, we're doing Zillow, et cetera. That I'm able to say to them, what I usually find when I've helped a number of people over the years or talked to individuals that are for sale by owners is that their biggest challenge that they face is not education. In fact, most of them are pretty darn knowledgeable. Shoot, some of them are more knowledgeable than some of the agents that are in the marketplace. The problem is exposure. So your issue is not experience and it's not education, or excuse me, experience. Your problem is not education. One more backwards compliment. You know what, I'm looking at you and you're pretty darn smart. What I find is it's not usually education, it's exposure. So other than Zillow, are you doing anything else to attract people to your house? And I'm looking again for their answers. So keeping in mind that the for sale by owners methods that they use to market their home, look at this. This is what they say that they're willing to do, and we need to kind of know this because look at how often they're using video. And isn't video major at this point in marketing? 10%, 1 out of 10 are going to use an open house. An open house in today's market, 48% of everybody that buys a home goes through an open house before they buy one. Those are some major numbers. How about social networking sites? 12%. Major amounts of business coming from that. So there are so many things that they are spending their time not doing that if you can bring that to the table and show it to them, you can really earn some credibility. So again, remember, how long have you given yourself before you even consider the services of a professional realtor, right? How long have you given yourself before you even consider? And now the wrap-up dialogue to that. The wrap-up dialogue, and let me go back for 1 second in stage 2 before we get to that whole setup for the presentation, is after I've said how long you've given yourself to even consider, my wrap-up dialogue before I walk out the door is to remember my 4 questions, right? And so now I'm looking at them and saying, Mary, thank you so much. I mean, it's been great getting to know you. You've got a beautiful home. If I were just to wrap up some of the things we talked about, I had mentioned that you having a second opinion on your value would probably be prudent. It surely doesn't cost you anything, and you know, it may take a little bit of a few minutes to review, but I think it would be well worth your time as a for sale by owner. And we mentioned that you were planning on paying closing costs, and I have found that it helps a lot to have an estimate of what those closing costs are going to run. So I'd be happy to provide that for you. And I usually will plug that in and show somebody what their net would be based on that. And one of the other things that I'm willing to do is share my marketing plan. I'd love to show you what I do when I market a home like yours, and I promise you it will make you 100% more effective in getting your home sold. And you mentioned, you mentioned that you might consider the services of somebody in the next couple of months. And, you know, so what I want to do is this. If you're open to it, I'd love to come back and share that information with you. I'll bring you back a second opinion. I'll bring you back the absorption rates that I talked to you about. I'll bring you back, you know, the comparables in your neighborhood with adjustments, that you can see what the value of some of these great amenities that you have, because we find that sometimes things make a house more saleable, not more valuable, and vice versa. I'd love to bring you back my marketing plan, share with you all the things that we're willing to do, and as I said, I promise you it'll make you more effective in what you're doing. And would love to do it maybe sometime in the next couple of days if you're open to that. And they look at me, and I've seen the look over and over again, and they've said, well, you know, maybe, I mean, I guess, why would you do that? And that's what, well, why would you do that? Why would you put all that work into it? And this is what I would say to them. Listen, here's the way I feel. If there's the chance that you'd even consider the services of a realtor in the near future, I'd love to show you what it is that I do so that when you get to that point, it's much easier for you to decide the right person for that job. And guess what? If I help you sell your home, if what I share with you helps you sell your home, and you're impressed with who I am and what I've done for you, and you refer me to a friend or a family member, I'll take that all day long. And they go, okay, all right. And now some of you are going, why in the heck would I want to do that for all those people? Because we go back to what we said. It's usually not about education, and that's what we're doing. We're educating them on the process. We're even educating them on our marketing plan. The problem is exposure. 90% of the time, everything you told them, they're never going to use. But what they are going to get an awareness of is, wow, this concept I have that we can do the same thing you can do, that we don't have to pay for what you do because there's no differential between what you do for a living and what we can do selling our own home. when they start to see your 2-page marketing plan that starts to go through target marketing for a buyer profile, how we're going to use technology, how we're going to add boost, how we're going to capture the pinned up demand, these are all the things that we do to make sure that we have knocked a home run when it comes to finding your home. We know how to search for the buyer pool, and we know when it's time to make the adjustment based on eliminating the buyer pool, watching data analytics. By the time you're done, their head is spinning. And you're able to say, you know what, here's something that I would suggest that you consider, whether it's signage, whatever it happens to be. The one thing that I don't do is when I talk to them about professional marketing or something along that line, the one thing I don't do is hand them the name and phone number of my photographer, my videographer, my drone expert, whatever it happens to be, because so often the right photos do make a difference in regards to them getting the showings and the activity. So wrapping that up, again, as I said, I qualified this when we started, and I said to you that what I'm getting ready to show you is not theory, it is practice. It's been done over and over and over again, and I know it works. But I also know it will eliminate probably 50% of the people who would be willing to work for sale by owners because it requires a lot of upfront commitment. The best part about it is if you're willing to make that upfront commitment and you're willing to build a relationship with these people, you've got a couple of good outcomes. One is you earn the listing. The second is you earn the referral. You earn a person who likes who you are. You win them over when it comes to the value of a realtor. They go into your sphere of influence, and you start working that relationship in order to earn the referrals. And I've always said a person who refers you is 10 times more important to your business than a person who buys or sells from you. Because somebody that buys or sells will buy once or twice, in a 7-10 year period. Somebody that refers you can do it year after year after year. So look at the referral opportunity. And third, there's the possibility of selling them something when their home sells. And if you earn the credibility with them that they go, you know what, it looks like we're going to get a contract on this, but we really like who you are. Can you help us find another house? If you're going to really work for sale by owners and you're going to do it very legitimately, and this is going to be a focus of your business, it's going to take some time. It's going to take some effort. It might even take some money. I mean, I had an individual that when they worked for sale by owners, they actually produced little 4x5 cards with the information of the house, like the picture of the house and some information on the back. And the bottom of the card, it had the number for the for sale by owner on it, but the bottom of the card said compliments of, and let's just say Pam Urban, ABC Realty. And they gave them to the seller and said, here, I thought this would be a great example of the quality of marketing that I would bring to the table if we were working with your home, but I thought these might help you right now. You might want to hand these out at work. You might want to hand them out if somebody comes to the house or knocks on the door. It gives them a way to contact you. And what they're looking at is, as they're looking at it, compliments of John Smith, ABC Realty. Pretty impressive. So be thinking about not just the immediate benefit, but what's the long-term benefit? Some of you have been working the same SOI, sphere of influence base, the same numbers for 5 years. It's like I check with agents sometimes when they had 100 people 5 years ago and they still have 100 people. Where are all the prospects? Where are all the new people that you brought in and put into your sphere so that instead of targeting 100 people who might buy, sell, or refer, you've got 125 people who might buy, sell, or refer. All right? So we're going to go into this last presentation. And again, this is the FSBO dialogue, which is the pathway to that presentation. Here it is. I want to thank you for the opportunity. There's a pricing, a profit, and a plan. Those are the things that we're wrapping up in that dialogue. I recently completed a market preview in your area review. I can update it for your property. If you're in there and you go and you're saying, how did you come up with your price? Well, John and Mary, I've recently done a market review in your area. Happy to share that with you at this point. Profit. Profit is the buyer's closing cost, seller's net. Those are all the things that we're talking about bringing you as a value. Plan. What's the marketing plan? So pricing, profit, and plan are all the things that we're bringing back. And again, why would you do this? We aren't willing to list at this time. I'm willing to provide you this information at no obligation. All that I ask in return is that you give me the opportunity to be considered should you even choose, and the words even choose should be in there, to work with a realtor at a later date. And if this helps you sell your home, hopefully you'll say something nice to me about somebody else and possibly refer me to someone you know. And if that's the worst that happens to me, I'll take it all day long. I plan on being in this business for a long time, and reputation's everything. And I can tell you how many times I said, if that's the worst that happens to me, Mary, I'll take it all day long. I've said it many, many times. So in the package today, we've got the 2 for sale by owner dialogues. Everything that we just talked about is in the dialogues that I'm sharing with you. So that's like 20 years worth of FSBO work, guys, that I can promise you has been fine-tuned and changed, and I'm going to put this word in, but you've got the for sale by owner dialogue, first contact, door, phone, right? What's the purpose? The purpose is get the second appointment, preview the property. That's your only. Build rapport, preview the property. Second contact, for sale by owner dialogue. What's the purpose? Build rapport, collect information, get the third appointment or the next appointment, either the third contact or the second appointment. Get back to make the presentation. Okay, and on the screen is just my site, Facebook page is Real Estate Guidance. It's Pam Ehrman at Real Estate Guidance. Would love to have you hop on there, join in. You're going to see that there's a place that you can put in a request and send a message through Messenger app, and it will put you into a section that will allow you to download forms and do things along that line that you might find beneficial, some that align with what we've talked about today and some that will align with some of the other things today in some other classes that I teach. Would love to have you take advantage of those. And keeping in mind that if you're talking about building like a base where you're doing this consistently, products like Vulcan 7 or Mojo.com or RedX, all of those are ones that will pull together for sale by owners on a daily basis or expireds on a daily basis and put them in front of you in order to be able to make the phone calls. Okay? You can also find them in some of the sources through the Make Me Move section of Zillow, because for sale by owners will say, hey, if I get this, I'll move. So make me move. Make me an offer. And you'll find people that may not even be out there advertised anywhere, and they'll drop it in here just because it's kind of like, I don't really want to move, but I'll tell you, if you pay me this for it, I'd buy it. I mean, I'd sell it. And then there are companies out there like the Personal Marketing Company, and they have FSBO campaigns. They have expired campaigns. And they're pretty darn cheap. I mean, you've got one right here that shows 8 mailings for $10 per mailing. So, and I say for the group of the mailings. You can get each one of them for $10 and know that you could start, after you make some of those appointments, you could start doing the dripping, so to speak, on your for sale by owners. And there's some of the campaigns that are out there. Again, even if you don't buy them, look at them. See what the messages are. See if you like any of those messages that maybe you'd be able to deliver back to some for sale by owners in an email campaign or something along that line. And in Keeping Current Matters, they have, now Keeping Current Matters is a free product. It's a fee or free, so to speak. You can upgrade to a fee, and it will give you a lot of these things that are set up in format that all you have to do is print them. And some of their for sale by owner information qualifies for that. I think it comes out to be like $29 a month, and you have access to ongoing, constant, curated information. I think they pull from like 200 different sources to pull information and create marketing pieces like this that you might be able to put in a card format, in a series format, in a handout that maybe you're going to a for sale by owner. But I can tell you this, the real success that I have had with for sale by owners was not making them feel like they couldn't do it without me. It was respecting the fact that they could possibly do it, and if it doesn't work, I'm their choice. I get that you want to do this. I understand that you feel competent enough to do it, but what we found is it's not really about education, it's about exposure. Nothing is an insult to them, and nothing creates a we, they, or pits us against them. Now, I'll end with this because I loved this story. I went to a seminar in my 20s, and I listened to this man who was a speaker who was talking about working for sale by owners, because there's some of you out there that are saying, that's way too much rejection for me. I mean, why do I want to get up every day and really deal with the people who are going to reject me from day one? And he was talking about working for sale by owners. And he talked about his family, his children, how much they meant to him. And then he talked about the fact that we come into real estate and we want to repackage it. We want to make ourselves something other than salespeople. We want to be in marketing or counseling or whatever we want to call it. But we're not willing to accept that if we're in sales, one of the criteria for a great salesperson is the ability to handle rejection. And so he talked about focusing on the idea that working with for sale by owners is a formula for absolute rejection, and you had to decide whether you were willing to do that. He talked about making that decision for himself, and he talked about driving up to a for sale by owner's house. He had a picture of his 2 children and wife on the visor above his head, and he would stop in front of the door, and he would drop the visor, he would stare at the picture for about a minute, and he would say to himself, what's on your screen? One of the pearls. I say it's my pearls, but it's because I heard it 25 years ago. He said it, but I loved it. We allow people who don't know us and don't care about us to have more to say about our success than the people who do. And he would say that to himself, looking at his children and his wife, and then he'd make the decision to shut that visor, get out of that car, and decide that the people in that picture were 10 times more important to him than the rejection that might be behind that door. And he'd go do his job. And so I'm going to encourage you all. Working for sale by owners ain't nothing but a thing. It depends on how strong your why is. It depends on what you want to do differently this year. It depends on whether the path that you ran your business on last year was not enough to get you to where you wanted to be, or where you want to take your family, or what you want to give yourself or the people you love. If for sale by owners are part of that plan, then remember not to allow people who don't know you and don't care about you to have more to say about your success than the people who do. Don't let them shut you down from doing your job because you're more worried about rejecting them than caring for the people you love. And remember, I understand that, Mr. Smith, that's why you're for sale by owner. And just remember that these are some of the toughest tasks, that a for sale by owner feels that they've got to overcome in selling. Getting the right price, understanding the paperwork, preparing and fixing the home for sale, selling within the planned length of time, and having enough time to devote to all aspects of the sale. Those are the challenges they're having. So just remember, it's hard to be the answer to what somebody's praying for unless you know, or the answer to their prayers unless you know what they're praying for, right? So we're going to wrap that up for today. That's my email, Pam@RealEstateGuidance.com, if you'd like to send anything to me or ask me any questions. Again, if you'd like to communicate, please visit my Real Estate Guidance page. Like it, take part in it, and there's some places that you're going to be able to enter into a messenger app or messenger bot that will allow you to download some things, and as I upload more, they'll be made available to you in the future. So thanks so much for this opportunity. Were there any questions at this point? Anything, Pam, that came through?
No, Pam. And we have to move on because we've got another session starting in 5 minutes.
Okay. All right. Well, it was wonderful talking with you all. Thank you for the opportunity with you, and I hope I have some of you in my next session on Teams.
Thank you, Pam.
You're welcome.
This virtual conference session has concluded. Please close this window to exit out of the session and return to the main conference site to choose your next session and to attend Day 1 agenda page. Thank you. You may now disconnect.